Hello, Buckeye fans, and welcome to another episode of the Bucknuts Happy Hour. It's been a couple weeks since we did this because I was out of town and I don't know, just stuff was happening. So we're back. Today we are going to look ahead to Big Ten Media Days. I'm going to be joined shortly by my co-workers, Dave Biddle and Steve Hellwagon. I'm Patrick Murphy, as always. But before we get into that, we got to crack some beers. Today, hazy IPA from Wolf's Ridge. I have a handful of these in my refrigerator, so I decided let's bust one out here. It's a Friday afternoon. We're getting ready for the weekend, so we'll be sipping on that throughout the show. I also want to talk to you about Gooder sunglasses before we get going here. Gooder sunglasses are stylish sunnies you can get for only $25 a pair. We are in the middle of the summer. We are recording this in mid-July. The sun is out in Columbus, Ohio. If you're not in Columbus, Ohio, I hope it's out wherever you are. We're headed into football season where hopefully you're going to be outside at Buckeye games. You're going to need sunglasses. Goodars, no slip, no bounce, all Polaroids, all fun. They come with a 1-year warranty and a 30-day free return. They have a new vintage-inspired the Retro G shade. These will not slip or bounce, as mentioned. They are available in 4 different colors, and they are our favorite of the bunch. What makes Gooder unique or different from other sunglasses? When will you be using them this summer? Anytime you're out. They are great for running, cycling, golfing, going to the beach, hiking, football games, you might say. Now is the perfect time to get them in time for the rest of your summer, all the activities, and as I mentioned, football season. If you want to support the show and try a pair of Gooder sunglasses, they are giving Bucknuts Happy Hour listeners free shipping on your orders. You can go to gooder.com/Bucknuts and use the code name Bucknuts for free shipping. Gooder offers a 30-day money-back guarantee and 100% satisfaction. Again, that's gooder.com/Bucknuts and use the code Bucknuts for free shipping. All right. Let's get into the show here. We're going to talk Big Ten Media Days, and the guys I will be heading over to Indianapolis with, Dave Biddle, Steve Hellwagon. Gentlemen, how we doing on this Friday?
Doing good. Happy birthday, Patrick.
Yeah, doing great. Happy birthday.
Thank you. I was hoping to avoid that, but I saw you had this on your little subheader there. So, yes, I am 1 year older. Not quite as old as you two, but still feeling it. But, you know, it gives me even more of an excuse for a Friday afternoon beer.
Took him 0 minutes to get a shot at us, Wagon.
Yeah. Well,
no
you
time at all. You
decided to bring up the birthday, so I had to reciprocate there.
Oh, come on. So I did you a favor, and you do the opposite? Okay, I see how it is.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I look at it. Yes, 35 years young is what I am today. So I can run for president. That's what I can do now.
Hey, would you? You'd be a better candidate than anybody we got up there. So.
I told my buddy today, he texted me and asked what I was up to this weekend. I told him I'm trying to avoid telling people that I'm turning 35 because I don't want to be thrown into this fight. And let's not go down that road, though. That's a separate podcast to talk about. Thank you, Sue, for wishing me happy birthday. Look what you've done here, Dave. We're not going to talk about my birthday. We're going to talk Buckeyes. We're going to talk Big Ten Media Days. Boys, it's almost back. This is always the time of year when it feels like things get going. The 3 of us are going to be in Indianapolis next week for Big Ten Media Days. Before we get to that, though, speaking of your guys' veteran status on Bucknuts, what is it that stands out to you guys about Big Ten Media Days each year, just in general? And Steve, we'll start with you.
Well, actually, Go with Dave, and I'll finish this. I had to squeeze lunch in here as we were doing this because I got other stuff going on.
I know you wanted to go oldest to youngest, Patrick. So now I'm taking shots, Steve. Sorry, Steve. Sorry.
Go beauty before age.
Steve, I've always said I look at you as an older brother. Emphasis on older. No, emphasis on brother. Emphasis on brother.
Brother.
I tell you what, unless we're covering the national championship game or maybe the semifinals, this is my favorite thing to cover every year is Big Ten Media Days. And now it's on steroids with adding the 4 West Coast teams. Like, I loved it. Like, for years it was in Chicago. And frankly, it used to be a little bit better. You used to get like more one-on-ones, like pulling like Joe Paterno aside and stuff like that. There's just nothing like it. I'll keep this short and sweet. So this year, 18 teams spread over 3 days. You get every head coach in the Big Ten. You get 3 player reps from every team. There's nothing like that. I just enjoy it so much, and can't wait for it. They did the right thing by making it a 3-day event. I'm curious what you guys think. I'm pretty sure this is the last year, not ever, but the last year for a while, it's going to be in Indy. I bet you anything it'll be somewhere out west next year, Vegas, LA, which definitely won't suck, but I like Indy. But Patrick, this is my favorite event to cover, other than maybe the national championship game.
Yeah, it's always a fun one. Steve, what stands out to you about Big Ten Media Days?
Well, it's just the chance to get to see people at the schools that you've gotten to know over the years, the SIDs and different things like that. A few of the coaches, that obviously we covered Luke Fickell for a long time here at Ohio State. So it'll be a chance to touch base with him as the head coach at Wisconsin. And obviously the new dynamic this year, you've got 4 new schools, all of them on the West Coast. And it really, this is the beginning of the new frontier of college athletics with everything that's coming down the pike. I had a chance just the other day to talk to Ross Bjork, the new athletic director. He's only been on the job about 3 weeks now at Ohio State. And the conversation, I posted it on Bucknuts for everybody to see just kind of where things are at right now with the new situation in terms of how they're going to pay the student athletes and everything else. So I'm sure the commissioner, Tony Petitti, will have an update on all of that, transfer portal, NIL, TV rights, the new playoff. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of new in college sports, and I don't know that a lot of it is necessarily a great thing, but it is where things are headed. So if you're not up for change, then college football is not going to be the way it was for you in 1986 or 2006. It's how it's going to be in 2024 and going forward. It's going to look and feel a little bit different. So I guess we all just need to kind of come to grips with that and understand that, this is where things are headed. I thought, to delve too far off the path here, but I was talking with a buddy of mine yesterday. He's a West Virginia fan, and it kind of came out that every school will have $20 million to spend on paying athletes, revenue sharing, and yet on Wednesday when Ross Bjork talked, they said that all this money is going to be subject to Title IX restrictions, which means that women are going to enjoy some of this revenue as well. And it's just raises the continued questions, do the men get paid as the same as the women? Do the starters get paid the same as the backups? Do the seniors make the same as the freshmen? Does the rowing team get paid as much as the football team and the basketball team? So I don't think anybody really knows yet the answers to those pivotal questions, but I'm sure Tony Petitti will have some ideas on where things could be headed. So that's part of what I want to delve into. And, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I looked at the list of the players, and there's a lot of good players on the list from the different schools to talk to, and it should be a lot of fun over the 3 days.
Yeah, for me, really, this is always just the start of football, as I mentioned off the top. I mean, I know we have another month before games kick off after we get back from that, but I remember even before covering Ohio State, growing up, watching college football in college, things like that. Every time I'd see you guys and others at Big Ten Media Days, it was like, all right, we're back. This is when things kind of get going. So this is when I really get the juices flowing, even now doing this as a job. So that's always what Big Ten Media Days stands out for me. We're going to talk about some of the other teams there. Steve, you kind of mentioned some of the players. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But I want to dive into the Ohio State side of it. We know there's going to be Ryan Day, Jack Sawyer, Emeka Egbuka, Denzel Burke. This week, I've been putting out some stories on questions I have for each of those guys. But I want to kind of go quickly through each guy and get kind of your thoughts on what you're hoping to hear from each guy. And Dave, we'll start with you again. Let's start with Ryan Day. We talked to him not that long ago. about a month or so now. But what do you hope he can bring? He can inform us about at Big Ten Media Days. What are you looking to hear from him?
Yeah, and I know you tried the last time we talked to Coach Day. You led off the press conference asking about quarterback. So let's say I get the first question. I'll ask about quarterback because that's like the number one thing, but he's not going to say much about quarterback. So for example, I guarantee you right now, this is just my opinion. Some might disagree with this. He knows Will Howard is a starter right now. If everybody stays healthy, unless something crazy happens, he knows Will Howard is his starter, but he's not going to say that. Just like he kind of like talked around your question. So I'll ask it if I have the first question somehow. Hopefully somebody else has it. So I can ask the question I really want. Your confidence level in your offensive line, coach. Is this offensive line good enough to take you where it needs to go? Because he's been pretty honest about that in the past. He said like a couple years ago, I believe, that it wasn't a couple years ago. That offensive line was really good. It might have been last year. Probably was last year. He was like, yeah, that's our biggest concern. In fact, it was last year. Yeah. So I'm curious about the offensive line. Obviously, quarterback. And then others receiving votes, I'll go linebacker. Who's going to be your will linebacker? Is it going to be C.J. Hicks? Is it going to be Sonny Styles? What do you think about that? So there you go. Quarterback, offensive line, linebacker.
Steve, what about you? What are you hoping to hear from the Ohio State head coach?
Well, as I just coughed into the mic, I tried to mute myself real quick.
Gotta feel you like when you do podcasts, Coach. No.
Exactly. This is crazy. I think Ohio State fans are gun shy right now. 3 straight 11-2 seasons, and the expectations were high for each of those years, and then it crashed down to earth and it burned, each November with the loss to Michigan. And it's just kind of like, people are taking kind of a show me mentality right now for Ohio State. And I think even nationally, people have them on the basis of all the guys who came back ranked number 2 nationally. But if the offensive line or the quarterback don't play up to snuff, they could easily lose a couple games. Potentially. So you don't think that. You don't want to see that, obviously, but I think until they've gone 13-0 and got the number 1 or number 2 seed for the playoff, I don't think anybody is feeling like this is, a done deal just yet. So, what you'd love is for him to stand up there and say, we are going to win the national championship this year. We are going to beat Michigan, and we are going to win the Big Ten, and so on and so forth, and kind of put people's minds at ease. He can't do that, obviously. Nobody can. You can't foresee the future, obviously, but he at least can convey that position of strength and at least convey that position of confidence that he has in this team, and that they've worked really hard in the offseason, and that Coach Mick has the group basically ready to start preseason camp. So, those are those intangible type things. You just can't put a label on it. You're just, right now everybody's hopeful, even, Illinois and Purdue and,
maybe not Purdue, but
UCLA and whoever else are hopeful. But, a lot of these teams are going to have their dreams crushed, and it's going to be a morass of 5-7 and 6-6 and 7-5 teams here when we get to the end of the season. And so, again, for Ohio State, they got some challenges out there at Oregon, at Penn State, Michigan at home. Those are 3 games that really loom large for them. I don't see Michigan being there in the end. I don't know how you only bring back 4 starters and expect to contend again. I just have never seen anything like that. So even though a lot of their backups did play key roles on their national
completely new coaching staff pretty much on top of that.
Yeah, it was a mass exodus. So, working the room, talking to people, and that's what I'm looking forward to, getting over there and again, touching base with people and finding out what's real and what's not. And I think that, for Day, I just look at it that he just needs to convey that confidence and that belief that this team is positioned to do what it hasn't done the last 3 years.
It's interesting you say that, Steve, because I think back to, I guess it's 4 years ago now, when Michigan came in and all 4, including Jim Harbaugh and their 3 players, did just that. They had this, we're changing the way we view this Ohio State rivalry. They talked about some different things they were doing within the program.
Talking about the revenge tour, or are you talking about 2020? Are you talking about 19? Or are you talking
2021?
About
yeah.
Okay,
2021.
So 3 years ago. Gotcha.
Yeah, three years ago. Yeah, sorry. It was just, I remember thinking, walking out of Indianapolis and thinking like, that was very confident from a group that hadn't won in however many years and backed out of the game the year prior and everything. And, lo and behold, and obviously we can talk about the cheating scandal that certainly plays a part, but Michigan's won 3 straight. And so I think that'll be an interesting to see how Ryan Day does, and the players, as in what you're talking about, Steve, if they do present that confidence of, hey, this is it, we're going to go do this type of thing, even if they don't say it in that many words. For me, though, I'm interested in pretty much all of the things you guys said, but to add to it, how Ryan Day views sort of the new teams coming into the conference. And he's talked about it a little bit, especially when these teams were announced. But now that it's here, now that these teams are literally going to be in the same room, some of them, as Ryan Day and the Buckeyes, like, just what are your thoughts on, adding a team like Oregon, who is recruiting at a very high level and, was a team that almost made the college football playoff. USC's been on the rise under Lincoln Riley. Washington, obviously playing the national championship game a year ago. UCLA, obviously not at the same level as football, but that's another team that, Southern California, recruiting ground, things like that. So just to get his thoughts now that it's real that these teams are part of the conference, I think will be interesting to hear from the Buckeye head coach. All right, let's shift it to the players. We'll start on the offensive side of the ball. Steve, Emeka Egbuka, these are all 4-year guys, but Emeka Egbuka, the lone offensive representative. What do you hope to hear from the Ohio State receiver, who we haven't talked to since before spring practice?
Yeah, I think with Egbuka, he missed some time. Obviously last season, he did come out in the spring game and played pretty well and showed the young guys how it's done. And then he, went to the sideline and grabbed a ball cap, after getting his 4 catches. And
that's how it's done.
Yes, that's how it's done.
Someday you'll get there too, young guys.
I want to see and hear from him. He's a leader on offense, and I want him to kind of sell me on why the offense is going to go back to the levels it was with Fields and Stroud as the quarterbacks, and Haskins perhaps as well, though that was kind of a one-off type situation with him. But I just think that I want to know more about this offense. What's it going to look like? How do they find time for 2 running backs? Is the quarterback more mobile? Is he going to be able to do some things? How impressed are you with the quarterback? So on and so forth. I just, the young wide receivers coming up, Jeremiah Smith, the prodigy, is he ready for prime time? Ennis missed all of spring ball. Is he ready for prime time? Tate, some ups and downs last season. Obviously, personal issues kind of clouded his season as well, or family situation obviously was tragic and had maybe a little bit of an impact on his life last year. And certainly, I don't want to minimize that. That's something he has to live with now. But I just feel like there's so much more that all these guys can show in terms of football. And I think that's what Ohio State fans are eager to find out, is who are going to be the frontline playmakers on this offense. Is the tight end really G. Scott, and is he really a threat? Just up and down the line across there, what can he tell us about what this offense is going to look like?
Dave, what do you hope to hear from Emeka?
Yeah, I'm curious to hear, and he only can say so much. I don't need plays. The Chip Kelly effect. I might just lay it out there like that, I'll have follow-up questions ready. Give me your thoughts on the Chip Kelly effect. And then if he talks around it, then we'll get obviously he's not going to give out the plays that they're running, but how much different is that from the Ryan Day offense? Is it tweaking the Ryan Day offense, or would you say it's a little bit more than tweaking the Ryan Day offense? I'm very curious. And Emeka is, my gosh, he's not only going to be one of the best leaders on this team. He is so profound when you talk to Emeka, as you guys both know. You sit down with Emeka Egbuka, it reminds me of talking to many guys. You go over the years, like Anthony Gonzalez, like when I was young on the beat, like you'd walk away from that. I was like, damn, like, wow. You get this, and then you can name like dozens of guys. Like that's Emeka Egbuka. Like he just exudes leadership and grown. You never would know you're talking to a 22-year-old or 21-year-old. So I'm curious what he's going to say about Chip Kelly for sure, because that's such a huge story. And we all know that, but it's like Chip Kelly's here as an offensive coordinator. He hasn't been an offensive coordinator since he was at Oregon, like when he like made his name and then became head coach after Bellotti left. So I think, hearing what Emeka says about Chip Kelly and that impact he's going to have on this offense will be very, very interesting.
Yeah, I almost wish we got Chip Kelly instead of Ryan Day. Like, I feel like we've talked to Ryan Day enough that it would be fun to have,
Coach Day would probably agree with you on that. Yeah, I don't think Coach Kelly would.
No, probably not. He does not want to be a head coach. We learned all that.
He likes this part of it.
Right. But it would be interesting.
Just get $2 million instead of $4 million, not have to deal with you guys.
Right.
He would say that.
It would be interesting to get 45 minutes with just Chip Kelly, sitting there the way we get at media days. But Ryan Day will do, I guess. If we're taking a second, Ryan Day is a good second there.
He's great. Don't be careful. Don't get us in trouble. Ryan Day's fantastic.
I'm just kidding. We just talk to Ryan so often that, I've seen him twice this summer and gotten to interview him. Like, we haven't talked to Chip Kelly since the end of spring practice and only really once before then. So, but to answer my own question with Emeka, I'm interested. He talked before spring about his versatility this year and kind of moving around to different spots. And I looked it up, and he's moved around a fair amount. Now, some of that has to do with when they're in 3 receiver sets, he's in the slot versus 2 receiver sets, he's outside. But could that be even more so than that? Could Chip Kelly be looking to line him up in the backfield sometimes or do some different things? And that goes to your point, Dave. I'm interested to see where he thinks he will line up throughout the season. And again, he'll only give us so much info, but I think he's a guy who will kind of give you some hints on things.
Especially with the running back situation. Obviously, the Bucknuts have the best 1-2 punch in the country, arguably. It'd be hard to make an argument for anybody else. But depth can disappear quickly, as Ohio State fans know from PTSD from the 2022 season, even last year. I mean, they're playing Georgia basically for the national championship game. They're down to like their 5th string running back, and Xavier Johnson's out there playing running back. And geez, so they only have 4 scholarship running backs, but they're good. I mean, they're good 4 scholarship running backs, but 2 of them are true freshmen. So yeah, absolutely. I think they're going to mix in Emeka Egbuka, maybe a little bit of Brandon Ennis, not a lot, but and not just simple jet sweeps, which Ohio State has done with Emeka Egbuka. A lot more creative stuff than that. So, yeah, I think we will see Emeka run the ball a little bit more than we have in the past. Maybe a little bit of Brandon Ennis as well, like I said.
Moving on to Jack Sawyer. Obviously, he had an explosive end to last season. I think the easiest question is how do you take what you did in those last 5-6 games where, he had something like 28 total tackles and 5 sacks, and I don't remember the actual numbers. I've written it a few times. You can look it up. But how do you take that production, which looks like the Jack Sawyer people thought the Buckeyes were getting with the 5-star prospect coming out of high school? How do you take that and make it a more consistent version across your senior year? And that's obviously easier said than done, right? But you want to see Jack Sawyer play up to the level Jack Sawyer is capable of. And we know it's there. How does he then translate that to 12, 14, 17, whatever it is, games to become, the defensive end we all expect him to, and really kind of change the way that they can play defense along with JT Tuimoloau on the other side? For me, that's a big thing. If he can do that, I think this defense can take another step, he or JT. But talking to him about what it takes to do that consistently across a full season, I think will be interesting. Steve, what are you looking forward to talking to Jack about?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, that just improved pressure, improved productivity from the defensive line. It's 4 seniors basically starting across the front there, and it's a contract year for all 4 of them. And I think they have to work part and parcel together, interlocking, fingers and glove, et cetera, and just kind of be tremendous disruptors for the opposing offense and create turnovers and knock the ball loose and force interceptions and sack the quarterback and all these kind of negative plays that help you win big football games. And I think that that's what we want to see out of the defensive line. I think obviously in my chat, I have questions like, okay, this is great. Will they be able to stop the run when they have to against Michigan, Georgia, whoever else that they have to play when the real chips are in the middle of the table? It's real easy to do it against Western Michigan and Akron and all these other, teams that are on the schedule, but will you be able to do it when the money is on the line and the championship trophy is at stake? Are you going to be the better team? And they haven't been for 3 years. So I think that is something that obviously, bears watching. I mean, Michigan was the only team offensively that really exploited things against Ohio State's defense last year. And again, ran for more yards than Ohio State did in that game. And lo and behold, they won the game. So got to get that flipped on both sides of the ball. And I think that's a big question. I think that, when the time comes and the money's in the middle of the table, are they going to produce? Are they going to get off the field, or are they going to let the other team extend drives and put the ball in the end zone, as they allowed Michigan to do in that one game?
I'll say this about Jack Sawyer. I'm curious to get his thoughts on – I feel like the light came on for him at the end of last season. I'm curious if he agrees with that. That's like when you're asking an athlete that's almost like they're going to take it as like, oh, so you think I sucked? And then
Prior to that,
so like he might push back on that. I'm ready for that. Like, that's not what I mean. Like, he was out of position. I thought that they were trying to like do that jack roll and move him around too much as a sophomore. He had jacked himself up. He had gained maybe a little too much. Not you can get too strong, but you can definitely gain too much weight. He was in such a good position last year at the end of the year. And I'm curious if he agrees with that. And I'll have to find a good way to articulate my question. Do you agree with that, Jack, that the light came on for you last year? And if he says yes, hopefully, what do you attribute that to? What happened? Why did the light come on for you? So that's what I'm curious to hear from Jack.
Yeah, I think that will be interesting. I certainly think you can take something from the end of last year, right? Whether he can put up those type of numbers throughout the course of the whole season, I don't know. But he looked more like the defensive end we expected him to. And, I think they did mess with him by moving him to the jack. And I think everyone, if you could get them with talking truthfully, I think Jim Knowles, I think Larry Johnson, I think Jack Sawyer would tell you that was not the move that should have been made in retrospect. Obviously easy to say now. I think at the time we all would have been like, yeah, Jack Sawyer, athlete, smart guy, understands the game. There were reasons to think it would work. It just didn't. Before we carry on with Big Ten Media Days, I've got another ad read for you guys. And this one is about Babel. You've probably heard about Babel. It is the best way to learn a language. And they do it through immersion. I took 2 different languages throughout middle school and high school. I could tell you very little of them now. I went to Spain this past spring. I took Spanish for 4 years, including college. Hardly know any of it anymore. Living where the language is spoken and using it every day, that's the best way to learn a language. But if that's not in the cards this year, you can still learn a language the second best way, and that's with Babel. 1 in 5 Americans have to learn a new language or have it on their bucket list, and this is the way to do it. You can be better you in 2024 with Babel, the science-backed language learning app that actually works. Don't pay hundreds of dollars for private tutors or waste hours on apps that don't really help you speak the language. Babel's quick 10-minute lessons are handcrafted by over 200 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. Babel's designed by real people for real conversations. Their tips and tools are approachable, accessible, rooted in real-life situations, and delivered with conversations-based teaching, so you're ready to practice what you've learned in the real world. Plus, Babel's speech recognition technology helps you to improve your pronunciation and access. Studies from Yale, Michigan State University, and others continue to prove Babel is better. One study found that using Babel for 15 hours is equivalent to a full semester at college. Man, I wish I would have known that at the time. Here's a special limited time deal for our listeners. Right now, get up to 60% off your Babel subscription, but only for our listeners at Babel.com/Bucknuts. Again, 60% off at babel.com/bucknuts. That is BABBEL.com/bucknuts. Rules and restrictions apply. All right, gentlemen, back to Buckeyes. Denzel Burke, cornerback Denzel Burke. He's probably the guy I'm most excited of the Buckeye contingent to talk to because I love talking to Denzel Burke. You get honesty, you get football. You could ask him about, frankly, anything. I think he'd give you no hold bars, give you his true opinion. I remember last year before the Cotton Bowl, him saying, like, I'm not ready to talk about Jeremiah Smith as being the next guy because, frankly, I haven't seen it. And, talk to most other people, they're going to hype up Jeremiah Smith. I love talking to Denzel Burke. Dave, what do you hope to learn from our conversations with Denzel at Big Ten Media Days?
You nailed it. I mean, just like throw a topic out there and he'll tell you exactly what he thinks. I think he was on a podcast or maybe he was on 97.1 The Fan recently. And gosh, what was he asked about? And he was cracking me up. He was asked about something that you would think he would like be gushing. And he was like, yeah, I don't know. I'm not really a big fan. I'll think of that in a minute. But he was talking about the freshman corners during the spring. I'm sure you guys remember that. They all come in like Aaron Scott and Bryce West. They're coming in with all these accolades. He's like, yeah, I'm not impressed with those guys. And I didn't like this just because I didn't want to hear it, but I get it because it's Denzel Burke. Somebody asked him about Will Howard. He goes, I need to see more out of Will Howard. This is exactly what you're talking about. Ask him about anything. Like, what do you think about this? Was that an interception last year in Ann Arbor? He'll be like, hell yes, it was. Like,
he said as much.
Denzel, yeah. So like anything you ask him, like, I can't wait. What do you think about Jeremiah Smith now? Because you said you needed to see it. Have you seen it? And seriously, I've been touting this, and I don't say this lightly, as I always preface this. There's been some fantastic. I'm just talking about in my day. I'm not going to go back and disrespect Jack Tatum and guys I never saw play. Just during my time, I give 1996 Ohio State secondary the gold standard, the best Ohio State secondary that I've seen. Okay, you got Sean Springs was Defensive Player of the Year in the Big Ten. Didn't have an interception because no one wanted to throw his way. Number 3 overall pick of the draft. Ty Howard was your other starting corner, was a second-round pick. Antoine Winfield, as a sophomore, was coming off the bench. All right, played a ton, was the nickelback. He was basically a starter, but still, that shows you how good they were at corner. Antoine Winfield, as a sophomore, was coming off the bench. Then at safety, you had 2 guys that were drafted, second round, third round, Rob Kelly, Damon Moore. Damon Moore didn't get drafted until a couple years after because he was a sophomore. That's my gold standard. Barely above 2016, Garyon Conley, Marshawn Lattimore at corner, Malik Hooker at safety, fantastic. 2019, also a great secondary. This is the best secondary I've seen. And I want to get Denzel Burke's thoughts on, not the history of Ohio State football like I just laid out in the secondary, but like, do you guys talk about this? Like, are you like, BIA, you're going to talk about BIA and everything. Jermaine Matthews is your number 4 corner. Calvin Simpson-Hunt's your number 5 corner. Like, you guys are deep. You're talented. So I want to get Denzel Burke's thoughts on everything, but I definitely want to get his thoughts on, you guys are stacked. Lathan Ransom coming back, Caleb Downs transferring in. I mean, Malik Hartford's your number 3 safety. Yeah, man. So I can't wait to talk to Denzel. We're going to be fighting over him, aren't we?
Yeah, we will.
We'll have a draft. We'll have a draft at St. Elmo, as we were wont to do.
Steve, what are you looking to hear from Denzel?
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think that Burke is a guy who, belief is half the battle in this whole thing, is going onto the field and knowing you're the better guy and knowing that you can go out and prove it. And I think that has been something that's been a hallmark of his career at Ohio State, is that he's rarely given up that big play. And, if he did, you knew there was a damn good reason why it happened. I mean, that throw that you guys referenced at Michigan was, something, that was just kind of sublime. I mean, it was fit between 4 people or something, and somehow the guy caught it. But and so did Denzel Burke. But at any rate, I want to hear from him just his feeling on how the defense can get better, how again, we talked a little bit with Sawyer. The running game is going to be a big part of when they get in those tough games, how it's going to go. Just general things. Caleb Downs, what he's brought. at safety, what they need to have out of the new linebackers in front of them, what those guys absolutely must be able to do in front of them, because you got, Styles at least hasn't played linebacker. He's played before, but Simon's only really been a part-time player, and Hicks really hasn't played a whole heck of a lot in live games on defense. So I think you want to see, hear from him like, hey, this is what we're telling these guys. This is what you have to do to play at this level. And I think, Ohio State, Dave brought back some great memories. I mean, 1996, the game they lose to Michigan scored.
That's not a great memory. Let's not
I know that's not a great memory.
Other than that game, the whole season was great.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that the game they lose, they gave up 13 points, and Sean Springs slipped and gave up one touchdown, and that'll just tell you how great that defense was. Well, last year, Michigan was the only team that really exploited anything against this defense. So I want to hear, how they're taking this to an even bigger standard, a better year coming up.
For me, and I've asked Denzel about this, but I want to discuss it further. It's the turnovers. And he talked about it multiple times this offseason, this team turning the ball over. They did it in the spring game. Now, how much does that have to do with the quarterbacks on the other side, especially some of the younger quarterbacks? But I asked Denzel after the spring game, is this a reflection of what's happened in practice? And he said, yes, that they've been taking the ball away. Well, now I want to know, what's changed? Why? Some of that is obviously just opportunity, right? You get some luck to be in the right spot, things like that. You catch the ball, and maybe instead of it being a little high or, just out of your reach, the Michigan play, for instance. But why do they think they will be better at turning the ball over? And then kind of a fun one I want to ask him. He was asked in the spring about his rating, what he thought his rating should be in the new college football video game. And I believe he said he thinks he should be a 95. Maybe someone will correct me on that. He's a 91 overall, which is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's tied for the 6th best player on Ohio State's roster. Still one of the best players in the team, in the country, according to their ratings. But I want to hear what he has to say about that. I assume he's probably played the game at this point. I want to see how he feels like he's represented in the game, because he was the first player in the country, I believe, to opt in and say he was going to be in the game. So I have some questions for him about the game, which I have not played yet. So, and probably
that should have made him a 95 right off the jump. I mean, to be the first guy in on the game, my God.
Yeah, there are not many 95s in the game. Caleb Downs,
first round pick. I was filling in on 97.1 The Fan yesterday, and they had an NFL draft expert on, and Anthony Rothman asked him, great question. I don't even know the answer to this, although I kind of agree with the guy. Who's going to be the first Buckeye off the board in the 2025 draft? And he said, Denzel Burke. I can buy that. That for sure. Yeah. So I think he should be a 95. He's going to be a first round pick, first Buckeye off the board, presumably.
Yeah, you put
That's
together
a tough question to answer, because if
that could be a whole show.
Lowell has a career year, Sawyer has a career year, or Buka has a career year, any of them could be the first one off the board. But corner is such an important position. I mean,
right.
those 3 positions in quarterback that we just outlined are the ones that really make the engine run. So,
absolutely. All right. The final thing I want to ask you guys, and I briefed you on this ahead of time, so you better have some answers ready. Outside of the Ohio State guys, and this could be a player, a coach, maybe even a group, like a team, but who are you most excited to talk to? Or maybe it's even what you're excited to talk to about to a specific guy other than the Buckeyes. Dave, we'll go with you first.
Definitely the West Coast teams. I'm just going to be soaking up, because I have a lot of experience about this. We have our tags right on there. If I go up to Michigan guys, they're going to have their antennas up. Now, I've had good experiences too. As much as we don't like Taylor Lewan, I actually had a good experience with Taylor Lewan at Big Ten Media Days back in Chicago. It was basically a one-on-one. There was a Michigan reporter there. He's like, oh, Ohio State guy. I'm like, yeah, you mind if I ask you a few questions? He's like, no, not at all. And then he was talking about how he views Michigan State and Ohio State as equal rivals. I'm like, oh, that's interesting, Taylor, because a lot of people consider Ohio State, Michigan the greatest rivalry in all of sports. And you're saying it's tied with you and Michigan State. He's like, okay, you got me. And gave me a really good answer then. I've had some good experiences. Rich Rod actually was good once, not so much. So I would say Michigan, going and talking to the Michigan guys, but I'm going to go with, I want to talk to the Oregon guys. I want to talk to, Dan Lanning, their head coach, their player reps. I want to talk to Lincoln Riley about their thoughts on Ohio State. That's always the easy, it's low-hanging fruit for us to ask other teams about Ohio State, but it's always fruitful. I recommend that highly. So I want to get Lincoln Riley's thoughts on Ohio State and his thoughts on joining the Big Ten. Same thing with Dan Lanning and his players. Washington's coach was, former Jed Fish was the former coordinator at Michigan. So he's got some experience here. UCLA with Chip Kelly leaving there. And it's just so interesting. I think everybody agrees. I've been doing some Q&As with some of our 24/7 sports colleagues at Oregon and USC. Everybody agrees it's exciting. Everybody agrees it's strange. You know what I mean? And then some people like it, some people don't. That's where the difference is. I think everybody says yes, these 4 West Coast teams joining is exciting and it's strange, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, man, I'm looking forward most to talking to those 4 new West Coast teams.
Yeah, I'll get into that in just a second. I would have not really minded had they kept East-West, because it could have been the Central Time Zone and the Pacific Time Zone teams in the West, with maybe Illinois crossing over to the East. Mm-hmm. And it really would have been kind of down the middle, and you would have played 8 division games and 1 crossover from the other division. And then that way you only have to go to the West Coast every other year if you're an East Coast team. So that, to me, and you wouldn't get to play USC quite as often maybe under that format, but when Pat and I came back from the Rose Bowl that time, we stopped in Nebraska, and it was only like a 2.5-hour flight from LA to Lincoln, Nebraska. And that's not bad at all. I mean, when you think about it, Lincoln, Nebraska, and those teams that are in the center of the country, you can get to virtually every corner of this country in under 3 hours with a direct flight out of Omaha. So, to me, that's an advantage for them to be able to recruit nationally. And I would have liked to have seen that as opposed to this. And this willy-nilly, we're going to tell you in October the year before who you're going to play and where it'll be. And, people want to make plans. I want to go out to LA in 2025 for that game. Well, we don't even know if they're going to play in LA in 2025. So it's like, yet. So that's just my soapbox on that. I really wish they had not done this, or at least done it in some kind of rational format, but whatever. We're going to fly from Rutgers to LA and, for a big who cares Rutgers USC game. But
actually, LA to Rutgers this year.
Yeah.
I think it's USC going out to Rutgers is the big travel.
Yeah. The
coast
whole
to
thing,
coast, baby. Coast to coast.
The whole thing's ridiculous. So, anyway, I had my list. Luke Lachey, tight end from Iowa, is going to come and play in the Horseshoe, 5 minutes from his hometown of Grandview.
Nice job picking Joe Royer over him.
Yeah, Joe Royer and all them schlubs that they took at tight end who aren't there anymore. Isn't it amazing? They recruit tight ends by trade, and none of them ever make it. But, you take Stover, you take G. Scott, who didn't play down a tight end at high school, and they're your guys. What is it about this tight end position at Ohio State? It just doesn't make any sense. Spencer Holbrook, one of the guys from Leonard Monroe, and I were at the camp and watching Bailey work out a tight end who they ultimately offered. And he's like, what are they even looking for at tight end? I mean, what are they trying? I don't think they even know what they're trying to do at that position.
I would look for a guy like Luke Lachey, whose dad is a man-child, was an All-American and is a 3-time Super Bowl champ and wants to be how about we go with this Joe Royer kid instead? No, you're allowed to listen.
Greatest American hero.
We laud everything good they do. Okay, we're allowed to also be critical. Picking because they camped together. One of those guys was going to get the offer. One of them was not. They picked Joe Royer over Luke Lachey. Not good. Not good.
Yeah.
Not good.
Let's see. Who else do I really, 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 really want to talk to? Nebraska.
We have a suggestion here, Steve.
Yeah.
You're going to ask Sharon Moore. Why did you choose?
Yeah, why did
that's
you
the thing. They probably won't give an honest answer.
That's low hanging fruit.
Probably, right?
Penn State, you're 1-9. Your coach is 1-9 against Ohio State. Is there a mental block where Ohio State is concerned with your program? USC.
Y'all like blocked mentally is what you want to ask them.
Yeah, USC, this Miller Moss threw for like 19 touchdowns in the bowl game. Is he going to be the answer? You know, that kind of thing. Michigan, Donovan Edwards, you know, he kind of took a back seat, although Corum was just outstanding last year. You know, I want to hear them tell me about their dominance over Ohio State and how what they think if they're going to be able to continue it. Dylan Gabriel, the new quarterback.
Stir it up a little bit. Stir it up a little bit, Steve.
Yeah, stir it up. Stir the pot.
There you go.
Dylan Gabriel, the new quarterback at Oregon. You know, is Oregon really a top 5 team? And you know, you were 7-5 at Oklahoma. Why should we think you're going to be, you know, 13-0 at Oregon? So I don't know. That's kind of mean, but yeah. So there you go. Those are some of the ones. And you mentioned a lot of the coaches too. I mean, you know, this Big Ten, you're going to make a lot of money, but you know, it's only going to be in a 3-year contract, because when you go 6-6, 5-7, 4-8, you know, 3 years in a row, they're going to run you out of there and you're off to, you know, somewhere else. But I think there's going to be a lot of coaches churned out in this league over the next 10 years, because the haves that pay all the money for the players at the top are going to dominate this thing going forward.
Well, Steve, you took a handful of mine, which is fine. I'm glad we're on the same page. The one I really wanted to talk to was, you mentioned Miller Moss. We watched that game sitting in the hospitality suite at the Cotton Bowl. And
threw another touchdown.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, not necessarily him, I guess, but more Lincoln Riley. Like, is this actually the successor to Caleb Williams? Or was that more of like one really good game and he still has some things to work on? Donovan Edwards, another guy I'd like to talk to, because I've heard him interviewed before. I think he's a good kid. How do you, with all the talent gone from this Michigan roster, Dave, you mentioned earlier, the coach is gone from this Michigan staff. How do you defend a national title that way? Like, it's hard enough. We saw it here in 2015 firsthand. It's hard enough to do it when you have all the talent back. Now that you don't have most of the talent that won you a national championship, what's your approach here? And I think Donovan Edwards might be a good guy to ask that to. I am hoping to ask all of the Oregon players and Dan Lanning, what should Ohio State expect going into Autzen Stadium October 12th? Like, yeah, I think we've been
all big question, because I thought you were going to go like, how are you guys going to attack Ohio State? You can't ask that. They're not going to. That's a great question. Great. Yeah, sorry to interrupt you. That's fantastic. Good job. I'm glad Steve taught you well.
I've you've seen it on TV. You know that it's going to be a good atmosphere, but like, talk to me about what you think that game's going to be like, what the Buckeyes are walking into for that game. Even a guy like, and I'm sure he's answered this question before, I could probably Google it and find the answer, but a Hudson Card who spent 3 seasons at Texas before transferring to Purdue last season. Like, what was that like? You go from Austin, Texas, where football is everything, to West Lafayette, Indiana. You're talking about 2 very different programs, even if Texas wasn't back while he was there. Things like that, I think, are interesting. Maybe not even things I ever write about, because we're talking Buckeyes. I'm not probably going to write the Hudson Card story. But, if he's there and there's not a lot of people around, I may go up and chat with him about that. So, as you mentioned earlier, this is an opportunity to talk to some of these people. Steve, you mentioned off the top, Luke Fickell. Going to get to catch up with him last year was great. I will hope to make it over to him for a little bit as well.
Real quick, I got a story. So, speaking of Steve Hellwagon, so I pulled Mark D'Antonio aside. I think I remember the exact – I want to say it was 2010. So I think it was Tressel's last year, but we didn't know it yet. I asked Mark, and I had my Bucknuts shirt on. I pulled Mark D'Antonio, head coach of Michigan State, aside for a one-on-one. And he's like, sure, I'll definitely do it. He's like, oh, Bucknuts. Yeah, I always liked you guys. Does Steve Hellwagon still work there? I was like, hell yeah, he does. So, like, there's nothing like it. Like, you can be covering a game. Good luck getting a one-on-one with the head coach after the game or anytime. Like, it doesn't mean you're guaranteed to get a one-on-one with Michigan State's head coach or anybody, but I've had so many one-on-ones. I had one with Joe Paterno. The SID kind of looked at me side-eyed, a little bit. I got a quick little one-on-one with Joe Paterno one year. There's nothing like it, but I love that Mark D'Antonio was like, "Oh, Bucknuts. Oh, does Steve Hellwagon still work there? Oh, yeah. Oh, by the way, I left this out." He's like, "I love Steve." I'm like, "Well, there you go."
Hey, I got a quick
Steve. I won't say I love him, but no, I love
Mark D'Antonio was only there for what, 3 years, but
3 years.
I got a lot of good Mark D'Antonio stories. We used to play in golf outing at Scarlet with Buckeye Boosters, and I got paired up with him, myself, and our good friend Jeff Rapp.
That's why he knows you.
Yep, we're playing in a golf outing, and he's got Mel Tucker on the other line, and Mel Tucker is in Detroit at Cass Tech High School, or no, he's somewhere recruiting or something, and he gets off the phone and he's like, "Oh, Mel's just jazzed up about this recruit, wanted to let me know whatever." I go, "Oh, he's at Cass Tech, huh?" I said, "Are you looking at another All-American linebacker like Marco Cooper, who had just gotten drummed out of school on a weapons charge,
Oh my gosh,
the day of the spring game in like 02 or 03, he got arrested for having a weapon. He was driving by the stadium and got pulled over and had a weapon in his car and, got weapons charges and, whatever. And he just
Charles Babb, but I guess that time it was Marco Cooper. That's a Charles Babb type thing. Kidding.
Yeah. He just D'Antonio, he's got such a dry sense of humor. He just smiled when I said that. There was nothing he could retort about it. He knew I was giving him a jab, but oh well.
All right, guys. Well, that is it for our Big Ten Media Days preview here on the Bucknuts Happy Hour. Dave, Steve, thank you both. I will see you guys in Indy. We get there on Monday. It all starts Tuesday morning, so keep it locked in. And thanks, guys, for taking some time to preview some stuff, talk some stories. It's always fun when we can do all three of us.
Yep.
A lot of fun, Patrick. Thank you.
Good times.
All right. Thanks, guys. All right. I'm going to wrap this up real quick with a couple of questions/comments I saw that we marked during the show. Let me get to these here. Here was one from Gary Dorazio. I hope I pronounced that right. Do you get the feeling the coaches are excited for the new Big Ten teams as well as the disappearance of divisions? We sort of talked about that a little bit during the show, but I think from a coach's perspective, you play who's on your schedule. I don't know if they get too caught up into that. I have talked to a couple of coaches at Ohio State specifically about the lack of the divisions. And I had one coach tell me like they're way more excited, assuming Ohio State gets there, to play the actual second best team, with the caveat that often they got a team that they should obviously beat. But the fact that they get the opportunity to actually play the second best team in the Big Ten, as opposed to just the best team in the other conference, which generally was the weaker conference. I know there are coaches that are excited about that. So I will say that. But in terms of the new teams, like I think everybody's excited that they're coming, but I think Ohio State coaches are mostly focused on themselves and are going to play if Oregon's on the schedule, Oregon's on the schedule. If USC's on the schedule, USC's on the schedule. If it's all the Big Ten teams we've been used to, so be it. So yeah, that's kind of my perspective on that. Sue said, if Lincoln Riley doesn't make a 12-team playoff, is his seat getting hot? If I were making the decisions on Lincoln Riley, I would say yes. Look, you moved out to Southern California to kind of revitalize that USC program, He's done that to some extent. They've been significantly more relevant than they were most of the years prior, but they haven't gotten back to the Pete Carroll level years or even close. Haven't made a college football playoff. We've seen them lose in the Pac-12 championship game, which got Ohio State in a couple of years ago. So, yeah, I would say from my perspective, I think he probably is. Now, if you're USC and you're kind of looking around, do you think, is there somebody better out there? Are you switching coaches again? What's his buyout? Those type of things. So I think that all factors in as well. But yeah, I mean, I think it certainly starts getting warmer for Lincoln Riley, similar to the situation Ryan Day's in. If Ryan Day goes out and doesn't beat Michigan, or even if he does beat Michigan this year, but say the Buckeyes lose at Oregon and lose in the first round of the college football playoff and maybe don't make the Big Ten championship game or something like that, where it's clearly a disappointing season given the talent that you have on this roster and kind of how everything's been hyped up, I think Ryan Day's seat, not that he's getting fired, but that his seat might start to get a little bit warmer than it has been. So I think they're in similar boats, though obviously Ryan Day has been in the playoff multiple times, has been to a national championship game, has won Big Ten titles. So, he's got that at least under his belt at his current school. Doug Lundell said, I understand some concerns about offense, but a year later with a hard worker, we got to be better than last year. So I'm confident considering Chip Kelly being involved. I just wanted to touch on this because I do think this offense is going to be better. I wrote after the spring game about the offensive line, talking to Donovan Jackson, and he thought if you just take the experience factor of the offensive line, alone, don't talk about development or adding Seth McLaughlin or, any of those things. You just take the experience this year versus last year. You've got 4 guys, maybe 5 guys who have all started before. And he said that alone would make this Ohio State offensive line better. Quarterback play, let's just assume it's Will Howard who's going to be the quarterback. Okay, if he is at the level of Kyle McCord, but has the experience of playing multiple, winning a Big 12 title at Kansas State, also can use his legs, I think that elevates the offense a little bit. Yes, you lose a Marvin Harrison Jr. Yes, you lose a Cade Stover, who, despite not, maybe being the biggest name or the sexiest name, was important to the offense. But you add Quinshon Judkins. So, will this be CJ Stroud, Justin Fields, elite level offenses under Ryan Day? I think it's possible. I'm not going to say I would predict that necessarily because I still don't know with the quarterback, but I think it's definitely going to be an improvement over last year's offense, which really took a step back under Ryan Day, or at least what we expect from Ryan Day. Christopher Sowers said, have you noticed more urgency or no nonsense in the coaching staff and players? I think a little bit. Now, I will be frank, when we are around these guys, it often tends to be in an interview setting, and that's kind of all business. The players know how to handle that. They've been coached up, so to speak, on how to talk to the media and demeanor and things like that. So, but I will say that at these recruiting camps we were at over the summer, I do get that sense a little bit. And the coaches too, sometimes you talk to coaches at those camps and you're talking about some recruits, and then the conversation veers off and, how's the family, things like that. A lot of it was football this offseason when I talked to coaches. And I think other people would say that too. So, whether that translates onto the field or not, I don't know. But I do think there is a bit more of a seriousness to this group because they know this is the team that can get the job done. Russ Stollyard said, if Day loses to Michigan, he is gone. But what if he loses to Michigan and wins a national championship? Yeah, I mean, these are real things that are going to be parts of the conversation going forward. You are going to have times when you lose your rivalry game and a team wins a national championship, be that Ohio State or Michigan, Alabama, Auburn. I think it was Kirby Smart mentioned at SEC Media Days twice in his career, once at Georgia, once at Alabama. I think he was on teams that didn't win the SEC title and won the national championship game. That's going to happen more. These things are going to happen more. We are getting into an NFL style of schedule in college football where that Michigan game is going to matter, in Ohio State and Michigan fans' hearts. It's going to be painful, but it's not going to be the end of the world like it used to be in terms of how it affects your season as a whole. That doesn't make it any less important from a fan base perspective, but from a overarching college football perspective, it is going to change a little bit. So there are some very good things about going to a 12-team playoff. There are some things I don't like. And, the fact that the week-to-week urgency of college football is going to be gone, I don't like that a ton. And it takes something off of games like this. You can go out to Oregon and the winner of that or the loser of that game doesn't feel that much worse than the winner because it's just one game. If that's your one loss, if you're Ohio State, you're going to be all right. You're still probably going to get a second chance at Oregon, assuming they stay undefeated or only have one loss. And you're going to get a second crack at them, and you're still going to be in the college football playoff picture. Same with Oregon if Ohio State wins that game. That's just how it's going to be from here on out. We're going to have to change the way we think about week-to-week games. Now, don't go lose to Iowa and Purdue in a season when Iowa and Purdue aren't very good. But, you could afford maybe one of those losses if you can win at an Oregon or something along those lines. So it's going to be different. I want to thank you all for joining us on this Bucknuts Happy Hour. As Dave pointed out to most of you, it is my birthday, so I appreciate you guys sharing that with me. Christopher says, stay sober there, Pat. I make no promises on that, but I will be safe. Thank you all for tuning in. We will be back probably late next week after Big Ten Media Days, talk about what we saw, heard, all that stuff from Indianapolis. Thanks to Dave and Steve for joining me today on this happy hour. And thanks for all of you who tuned in on the live stream and those of you who listen after the fact. Subscribe to Bucknuts, subscribe to the podcast, all that good stuff. We appreciate it.